Welcome to the Synergy Podcast, the space where we redefine how we move, heal, and experience our bodies. My name is Arianna Montanari, yoga synergy teacher, beekeeper, and founder of Mielisega Natural Body Products. Sustainability in all forms is the thread I've been following and nourishing for over 20 years. Here, we break free from the unspoken rules that tell us how we should move and feel. Here, we long for deeper connection with nature, with ourselves, so through intuitive movement, self-care, and self-awareness. We explore what it truly means to work with the body instead of pushing against it, to understand it rather than criticize it. So whether you're a yogi, a seeker, or simply curious about stepping into a more liberated way of living, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Synergy Podcast, Simon. It's a pleasure to have you back, and I'm so excited for today's talk.
Arianna, it's a pleasure to be here with you again. Thank you for inviting me once again to talk with you.
Thank you for being here. Simon, I have had this morbid curiosity about addiction. Because it is such a multifaceted, such a broad topic, and I would like to discuss that with you from, say, a behavioral point of view, from a physiological point of view, and maybe how the 5D practice can support this. I'm just so excited to start. So would you be able to explain from a very general level, surface level, what is addiction? What does it imply?
Okay. Well, addiction, for many people is a way they can, self-regulate in a way. They're not happy with their life and they find something that brings them into some sort of equilibrium, or they think it's an equilibrium. If I can just quote a couple of things maybe. In terms of the way we understand addiction on a molecular biology level, there is this situation where the brain, when it's a drug type of addiction, the brain starts to change a little bit. Dopamine becomes a little bit blunted and a tolerance develops when you have too much of a particular drug. But addictions can also be not just from drugs, but they can also be from habits, habits including things like social media, pornography, workaholism, or exercise. Sometimes they can all cause addictive behavior. If I have to look at it through the lens of traditional philosophies such as traditional yoga, they often talk about this idea of making habits and breaking habits. They use the terms abhyasya and vairagya. And so abhyasya is to do with repeated practice and vairagya is to do with detachment. So when if you have an addiction, what you want to do is find a way of replacing the addiction with another type of habit, if you like, and that can sometimes help you alleviate the addiction. Addiction, it seems to be something which is a set of unconsciously repeated patterns, whereas what we really want is to create a type of yoga, if you like, which is a bunch of conscious repeated patterns, and they can tap into the same system. I think that's probably enough as an introduction, and maybe you can
Yes.
maybe talk about that a little bit.
So for a while ago, I listened to a podcast with Dr. Gabor Mate.
Amazing person.
Oh, he's such an amazing person. I literally listened to that episode and I was taking notes because it was like, wow, this is so interesting. So reading from my notes that now are turning out being very useful, he worked often with addicts and studied over time the relationship with people with ADHD, people with addictions, criminals, so people who commit illegal actions. So he said that it is a lack of free want versus free will. So you have free want and free will. So this
pre-want is a circuit that they have not developed. This type of people, they don't have the circuit to say, no, I'm not going to do that because this is not good for me. So they don't have that impulse of saying no. And addictions work on the dopamine system. So stimulant addicts boost their dopamine levels, and it happens the same as in ADHD. And so the definition that Gabor Mate gives of addiction is that it's manifested in any behavior in which a person finds temporary relief, like you said, or pleasure, and therefore craves it. But then the person suffers of the negative consequences as a result of this behavior and does not give up despite the harm. So craving pleasure relieves shorter harm inability to give up. So they know that there is some harm done, but it's still not enough to give up that behavior completely.
Yes, indeed. So I think another way of framing that is that addiction shifts the receptors on, like we have receptors on our cells which respond to, say, a drug, but it seems like it also responds to habit patterns that you have in life, like the addiction to social media or addiction to pornography. So we have receptor sites on our cells that may be similar in social habits as they are with chemical habits like heroin, for example. So addiction shifts the receptor sensitivity and signaling dominance in a way that causes a bias, or it biases the cell towards these craving states. So, you're actually getting a change on a molecular level here. And, this means the cells don't actually function very well. So addiction is not just chemical, in other words. At the same time, you're also creating a nervous system state which is often a stressful state. And in a way, we could talk about the addiction as being a repeated attempt to change your internal state through an external stimulus in a way which is unconscious. So when you've got most addictions, they're going to regulate low energy, high stress, emotional pain, dissociation, and lack of connection. But with what we're trying to do with the practices that I call 5-dimensional flow and 5-dimensional synergy flow, we're trying to create these expansion contraction cycles. We're creating blood flow without the heart racing, and a parasympathetic dominant state where your nervous system is relaxed. You're feeling energized but calm with minimal breathing, and you're also connecting to your gut brain. So this is going to then increase the body's natural endogenous, reward chemistry. This, gentle secretions of your own endorphins, endocannabinoids, balanced level of dopamine, oxytocin, this love molecule, and nitric oxide, which is this circulatory stimulant. And this, I think nitric oxide is the second most powerful neurotransmitter in our body, only second to carbon dioxide, both of which enhance the flow of blood through the body and help your nervous system become a little bit calmer.
That's the one that we secrete a little extra when we hum or
yes, yeah, or breathe through your nose. And it's the one that actually Viagra was using. So Pfizer, our favorite company, made a fortune from nitric oxide because that's what is produced with the drug Viagra, because it increases blood flow to the whole body and certain parts can be targeted like that. So, so if addiction shows us what state we are missing and what regulatory capacity we lack and where our nervous system is dysregulated. So addiction we can think of as a crude attempt at self-regulation. So instead of moralizing it, you can sort of teach the addiction is intelligent but misdirected. In the world of yoga, then they talk about the 8th truth of yoga, and that is that the nervous system will repeat what changes its state, consciously or unconsciously. So if it's an unconscious repetition of something, might be a drug or a social behavior, that leads to addiction. But if you make a conscious repetition, such as a personal practice of posture, movement, breathing, or mental control, then the same mechanism with different awareness can lead to a very positive result. And so in yoga, they sometimes say, make good habits and break bad habits, or any habit which becomes addictive could become a bad habit.
Very interesting over the years, because from my point of view, it's very clear that some people are more prone to develop addictions.
Yeah.
And for others, it is not at all. Although
Yeah.
in some moments of their lives that they might be more prone. I never felt the need to try drugs. Like I'm not even curious. I quit even like drinking, because for me there was no pleasure in that. But I see how other people, when they work the whole week and they're tired and or overstimulated, then they go and find relief in the outer substances, right? Like you said, they try to self-regulate, not through natural internal mechanisms, but with help of some substance.
Yeah.
And for me, this is just incredibly interesting. And maybe it is because over the years that I have been so curious about the human body. Even just living in Sweden through the winter, when I first moved here, people literally asked me, wow, you don't drink alcohol? How are you going to survive winter here? Like, I promised them that. And I was like, I think I'll be fine, because I was ready to go through that discomfort with my own resources.
Yes, I think you're remarkable, because even though we've worked together for the last, it's getting on 8 years now, I think, since we first met, and I consider you an elite teacher in the system that I've been sharing around the world, so you're up there. But your history before that, you had a lot of physical history. I remember seeing on one of your Instagram posts. Remind me some of the historical things you did with your body. You were doing gymnastics, I think.
Yes, swimming, dancing, gymnastics, capoeira. So
right.
A lot of different.
This makes me think of an experiment which was done some years ago. And the experiment involved a bunch of mice which were given cocaine. They had the option to take cocaine or food. And they lived in this very little cage, and they took the cocaine until eventually they ate so much cocaine they forgot to eat and they died. But then they did a similar controlled experiment with mice in a much larger cage with lots more activities in it. I think you remember this. It was a very famous experiment. And so they found that the mice, when they had other things to do, actually preferred doing the other things than going for the cocaine. So it's a little bit like you in your life and myself in my life have found other ways of doing this thing we call self-regulation. So addiction thrives when people can't tolerate discomfort, when they can't self-soothe, when they can't down-regulate stress, and when they can't generate endogenous reward behaviors, rewards themselves. So the system that we're working with, this thing we call 5-dimensional synergy flow, which is, to me, the common origin of all traditional movement, which resonates with the fields of medical science and physiotherapy, the idea of connecting with your gut brain and moving in an intelligent way which balances your nervous system, where the main aim is to encourage blood flow with a very calm nervous system, so you have lots of energy but you feel relaxed. All of this helps interoception, so then you've got core awareness and a gut-brain connection. It also helps autonomic regulation, because then you've got this slow heart rate, and we've got this ether cycle, this expansion, compression, the pumping of the blood through the body, through essentially the breathing muscles without breathing so much. And then you've got a dopamine rebalancing system. So you've got movement generated reward, and so we become then people who self-regulate internally, and are not needing external drugs or external social behaviors to get this down regulation of stress and generate rewards externally. We're doing it with the system that we've developed, and both you and I have been working on various ways of creating this inside the body. Now we've got a system that may be a little bit more together, but people like you and me have all our lives not been hooked into addictive behaviors because we've got these other ways of doing it. And I think that's why it's really valuable to work with what we're doing and to systemize a way of sharing with the world what we've discovered for ourselves works.
Indeed, because it's a journey. So it is
Mm-hmm.
a process of working with ourselves, understanding when we are overstimulated, when we are stressed, and you said being aware of those moments and making aware choices on how to move through. Because that's also a difference. Maybe if we keep kind of resonating on this, somatically, you can, feel something and try to just shut down. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to see this. That I just want to feel the numbness, right? I want to scroll on the couch for 1 hour. It has happened to everybody, like guilty. But you can also instead be more open, just being present with whatever is, happening, whatever is the present. Maybe move a little bit or journal, but just allow the thing that is alive, that emotion, to be seen, to be heard, and then poof, it's gone. It's like transitioning. So somehow it's
Mm-hmm.
also that concept of choosing movement rather than
Using drugs or social behaviors which are addictive.
kind of like exiting, like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I'm zooming
yeah.
out. Mm.
I think two things are important here, Arianna. One is to help people who tend to fall into this category of addictive behaviors, either addictions which are drugs like alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, and also the other types of people who sometimes don't realize that they're addicts, people who are addicted to exercise, people who are workaholics, people who are stuck on social media. These are all people on pornography is a major one. But these people often don't realize the addictiveness of what they're doing, and they don't really associate themselves with drug addicts. But really, it's a very, very similar mechanism. And so the two things that I think are important to share with people like this is, one, it is possible to find the same gratification within yourself, to find endogenous self-gratification without the need to fall into either chemical drug effects or social addictive effects. So that the knowledge that that's possible using simple posture, movement, breathing, and mental control techniques, that's the first step, because people don't believe it's possible. And then the second step is how to do that. Can you teach what are these simple movement techniques? And unfortunately, there's no one technique that works for everyone. And this is, for me, it's always been like a holy grail to find the one perfect class that's going to help everyone. But it doesn't exist. People have to find ways of doing something which suits all levels of their body. You've got to try and find, first, if we focus on those two things, first, I'll say to everyone listening, it is possible to bypass addictive behaviors by substituting them with intelligent application of posture, movement, breathing, mental control, and simple lifestyle changes. And suddenly you're no longer addicted. But what you need to do is create patterns or habits, and these conscious habits or conscious patterns can then, working through the same system that you get addicted to with these unconscious habit patterns, you can overwrite the unconscious addictive behaviors, which are usually destructive, with conscious addictive habits, which are good for you, that you've created yourself. So the knowledge that is possible, and that people do it all the time, and that some people just don't realize it's possible, that's important. Then the next step, I think, is to go, what we need to do is get people out of the idea that that if you're doing something with your body, that it's often associated with exercise. And many people are working with the wrong approach when they're doing posture, movement, and breathing. It's usually with this mentality of no pain, no gain, survival of the fittest. You've got to do it for a reason. You're doing this to get stronger. You're doing this to get more fit. You're doing this to get more flexible. Whereas if they can just get into the idea that it's actually really nice to live in your body and use it. And you don't have to use it to get stronger in the future. You don't have to use it for any future goal. Just do stuff with your body that feels good. And the way that it feels good is to connect the whole body as a whole, to try and use as many parts as possible, even minimally, and feel connected. And to also have this thing I mentioned before, where you are enhancing the flow of blood, which is really the way you move energy through the body, but you're doing it without the things that usually make people move blood through their body, which is heart racing and breathing more than normal. So you want to be in a state where you're hardly breathing, heart hardly racing, but blood is circulating. And when blood circulates effortlessly, you feel energized but calm and relaxed at the same time. And you also feel warm. And if you're doing this through movement, the movement massages your muscles, it moves your skin, and it moves the internal organs. So your internal organs start to work better. You get better immune, digestive, and reproductive functions. And as I mentioned before, that one of the things that we're sharing with people, Arianna, is this expansion, contraction cycle, where, if you see me from here, it looks like a deep breath in, deep breath out, deep. But actually, you can see I'm talking, I'm breathing out the whole time. But the ability to expand and contract the upper back and the chest, the abdomen in and out, that expansion contraction cycle mimics two types of massaging. When you contract the body, it's like someone is pushing you inwards, like a massage. When you expand the body, it's like someone is grabbing you and pulling you outwards. And so the two extreme forms of massage are massage where you push in someone and you pull out someone. And both of them are useful. Often many people massaging just press, but that doesn't help always. Often it's better to pull the region of the skin or the muscle out. And when you do this, it pulls blood into that area. So you need both, actually, and a good masseur or masseuse or whatever you want to call them will be pushing parts of the body and then pulling those parts out, rubbing one way, rubbing the other way, and one pushes blood, one pulls blood. And an effective massage is one that circulates blood, and so I always say that many people don't like exercise. The figures are quite high, actually. It's only 5% of the population who has a regular exercise practice. But that 95% who doesn't like exercise, they do love being massaged. Often, I love a good massage. So this is what many people will say. They won't get out of bed at 6 o'clock for 2 hours before work to do exercise. But if someone said, would you like to get out of bed? We'll give you a 2-hour massage before you go to work, and it'll be in a nice warm bath. They go, oh, that sounds good. So is it possible to make simple movement practices that actually cause no stress in your body, but feel like you're in a warm bath being massaged by someone who loves you, someone who knows your body, someone who only does what makes you feel good? The knowledge that that's possible is not with most people. But, I think we're here to share that message. You can actually practice like this. And a lot of people, even when they hear that it's possible to practice like this, even when you show them you can do a practice like this, they'll often go, but how could this be good for me? This is just selfish. But actually, this is a better type of repeated pattern thing which creates a type of conscious addiction than the unconscious addictions which have so many negative repercussions. And actually, the surprise for many people is that if you do these simple posture, movement, breathing practices, which can be as simple as, moving your fingers and shoulders, moving your neck in this seductive moving way like an internal gentle dance, you actually do improve joint structure and function. You actually improve your energy levels, and you actually don't get weaker. You're more likely to get stronger. So muscles just have to be reminded they're there for a purpose. Whereas most people are thinking, your muscle will not get stronger unless you make it hurt. Your muscle will not improve in size unless you work till failure. And I think working to failure is one of the reasons why people don't do exercise. Because working to failure is like suffering. Whereas when you take drugs, there's no suffering while you're doing it. It's only suffering when you're not doing it. So if you can make your practice feel pleasurable while you're doing it, that can certainly more easily replace a negative behavior pattern that people use, such as drugs. So now that I'm thinking of it, go on.
It sounds to me like we can go from highs and lows, and when we are in the lows, we need something to give us a little kick so we can feel a little bit better. But with this practice, we can almost higher the bar, that we always feel better, we always feel more balanced, and the practice makes us feel better, but also helps us not to get in those lows. You know what I mean? Because I'm not doing an exhausting practice. I'm not doing a practice that will kill me, and then I will need another kick to feel so much again. You might be so that you feel a little bit less, but you create such harmony and synergy, right, in the body, that you're more stable.
Yes, stable. A couple of things have come up. One is that many people go off drugs. I've in my life as a yoga teacher, I met many people who took up Ashtanga yoga because they were heroin addicts, or crack addicts or ice addicts, and so they gave up these intense drugs and they took up yoga. Some took up exercise. But the thing is, did they really get rid of an addiction, or they just substitute one addiction with the other? Because for many of these people, I saw they were working so hard that they were recognizing that each day when they woke up after an intense practice day, which often became every day, they'd be massively sore. And to me, if someone is really sore the next day after having a workout, which could also be a yoga practice workout, it suggests that during the practice, they were in such a state of sympathetic nervous system dominance. They were secreting endorphins, adrenaline, and cortisol, which are a little bit like coffee, cocaine, and heroin inside your own body. And when they exercise that hard, often they overbreathe. And, many practitioners in the modern world of yoga do overbreathe. And this overbreathing, you often hear it with this, which is, big in many circles still. And this hyperventilation, this overbreathing, causes a reduction of blood flow to the brain, and also hypersensitivity of your nervous system, because you drain your body of CO2, and CO2, carbon dioxide, in its absence will cause a shutdown of the blood vessels to the brain, meaning less oxygen to your brain. And it also causes a hyperstimulation of the nervous system, which means that for a person who breathes more than normal and is addicted to breathing more than normal, it's a little bit like marijuana, because, marijuana has for some people this lovely effect that they're no longer thinking as much and they can feel their body. I can feel my body. Oh, I'm not having to have 1,000 monkeys racing around in my head. They're out of their head and into their body. So often what I see is a lot of people who were drug addicts or being addicted to some social behavior taking on board exercise or Ashtanga yoga or some sort of vinyasa yoga, or I don't call it traditional yoga because I don't believe traditional yoga was like this, but this modern interpretation of these vinyasa practices, these yoga practices, is giving the body the sensation through the overstretching, overtensing, breathing, overthinking often in some cases, that they're on a combination of coffee, cocaine, heroin, and marijuana at the same time. And this is, maybe some people think it's better than an addiction to those actual chemicals, but in many ways the effect is the same. So it's important to go, okay, what type of movement, what type of exercise are you thinking of doing? So as you observed at the start of the call, I'm still wearing these two Whoop bands, which, for many years I had like my aura ring, which would measure a whole bunch of different parameters of my biophysical markers while I'm sleeping. The Whoop bands are telling me some interesting things. For example, over the last week, I've had very little sleep. I've been teaching a lot and sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night. And each morning it will tell me, you haven't had enough sleep. This is a day where you need to really take it easy. And then it says, if you want to, you can set an activity for a couple of hours, and it will read heart rate variability. It will read how much you breathe, what your heart rate's doing, etc. Then it gives you an interpretation afterwards. And on 3 days in a row where I hardly slept at all, it said, you've got to take it easy today. It said that whatever you did just then, I would give it different names, yoga, dance, whatever, like this. And because there's not many options, you have to pick some sort of thing. One I did was manual labor, I think. But all of them had the same effect. It said, whatever you did the last 3 or 4 hours has picked up your resistance. You have done something which has made your nervous system and your body energy levels recover. But it's really weird, it says, because your heart rate stayed really low, but you seem to use a lot of physical activity, but you didn't do anything which was stressful. And now you've recovered. So whatever you did in that 2 hours, it was worth doing. But all I was doing was these same simple posture, movement, breathing techniques that I'm saying, I'm moving in a way where I'm not feeling stretch. I'm moving in a way where I'm not feeling tension, but it makes my body more flexible and stronger without feeling stretch or tension. I'm making blood flow very effortlessly because I'm turning my whole body into one big pump through many different mechanisms we've discussed before, the other 11 ways of moving blood through the body other than the heart. And so blood flows without the heart racing. So the body's not experiencing stress, but you're getting strength without tension, flexibility without stretching, blood flow without the heart racing, energy into your cells without having to breathe so much. And if you do it the right way, because the system we're working with is working in coordination with your in terms of having a resonance between the thinking brain in your head, the gut brain at the core of your body, which is your enteric nervous system, and the key, what we call bridges between conscious and unconscious mind, these places in the body, like the diaphragm, which have dual control. You can control them with your conscious mind and your unconscious mind, such as your ability to blink, or your jaw, your lips, your eyes, your pelvic floor, and also including fingers, shoulders, the groin, the sacroiliac joints, your psoas muscle, the neck. All these places can be controlled both consciously and unconsciously. They are bridges between the conscious and unconscious. So since the core of the practice that you and I are teaching revolves around this nerve system interconnection, thinking brain with gut brain, the bridges between conscious and unconscious, then all of this is making an intelligence in our body circulate without needing to think so much. Because you're putting yourself in these practices. One of the key aspects of our practice is to put ourselves into the zone or the flow state. Like the elite athlete goes into the flow or the zone, it's not a place which is going to wear you out. This is the place where the elite athlete could run for hours. It's a level which they find easy. Of course, if we ran next to an Olympic athlete, we'd be exhausted. So what we have to do is find our own elite athlete flow state, which for some people might be just move your fingers. Move your fingers a little bit. Because there are people, for example, who are not well, who have very low blood pressure and they've got very high heart rate. And so this is one of the worst possible states. If the blood pressure is low and your heart rate is high, it says your heart is struggling to pump blood through the body. So the heart too high means they've got to rest. But then the blood still doesn't pump. So then what you've got to do is use other methods to pump the blood. And so if you can teach this, move in a way where it does not increase heart rate, but blood pumps more easily. This is a way of not just helping people with mental problems, but also physical problems as well, physiological problems. The one I'm describing now, it can be prevalent in people with major nervous system dysregulation, which becomes then systemic dysregulation and, sickness, which can eventually lead to fatality. Most people need more energy and more relaxation. And I think there was a recent post that was, I actually did this myself, but someone said, if you ask what is the secret of living as long as possible, is it the blue zones? They said the two most important things are having less stress in your life and more connection. And so one of the mottos that we use in the 5-dimensional flow system is share good energy and loving information inside yourself as a model for how you are in the world. And the sharing the good energy is making the blood flow inside your body with a low heart rate. And the loving information is that dominance of the parasympathetic nervous system, where you feel at this subconscious level peace, love, safety, trust, connection within yourself. And if you can get these feelings inside yourself, your body wants to stay and it's happy by itself. You don't need external stimulus. You don't need drugs or social behaviors. You're just happy with how you are, Sometimes people say to me, don't you ever get bored? I go, I never get bored because I've always got me. So as soon as the moment comes where I'm free, I go, let's go into my body and enjoy it. How much there is to do there. I've got 50 trillion cells to play with, 50 trillion of my own, maybe up to 950 trillion sort of guest cells, symbiotes, parasites living inside me. It's like in the 5-dimensional flow system that we talk about, Arianna, and I think I may have said this on a call the other night, but we can move our core in 5 different ways. We can move our trunk in 5 different ways, forward, backward, side, twist, lengthen, shorten, expand, contract. And if you just keep it simple and say, let's just move 2 of those things, then if you just move 2 of those things in the way that we're moving them, which is simply, this idea of expand the back, then expand the front, push in the back, push in the front, as a simple model for how you can get this wave-like expansion, contraction in the body. If you just keep those 2 things consistent, lengthening and shortening the trunk consistent, bending forward and backward as part of that, then you only need to change side bending and twisting. But there are 6,000 plus ways of doing side bending and twisting. So it's not like you're going to get bored. When I want to start exploring my body, I've got so many possible things I can do. Simple movements in the trunk alone. But then when you come to how you manifest them in the outer extremities of your body, I think it was in the Geranda Samhita or the Shiva Samhita, these classic textbooks of yoga, where they said that Shiva, the great destroyer god of ancient India, said that he invented 8,400,000 yoga postures, 84 lakh yoga postures. And when I first read this, I thought it was some sort of Indian exaggeration, but actually Indians were, the best mathematicians. The Vedic cultures, really were excellent mathematicians. And then if you just do very, very simple maths with what you can do with your body, and you make simple model of the body. The ankles can only move back and forth, so can the wrists. Elbows and knees can only bend and straight. But your shoulders, your hips, your trunk can move in 3 ways. Shoulder goes up, down, to the side, turns in, turns out. Same with the hips, and same with the spine. Forward, backward, side, turns either way. If you just consider the number of possible positions that the body can do based on that model, which is a very simple model, and I'll do it with my calculator.
You're calculating.
I've got a calculator, right, my mobile phone. Then it works out at 2 to the power of 23, because there's 23 different, places where you can move. One we call the wrist, another one the elbow, but there's 3 in the shoulder, 3 in the spine, 3 in the hip, 3 ways of moving. So 2 to the power of 23 equals 8,388,608, which is pretty much to 1 decimal place, 84 lakh. So it's like these Indian Vedic astrologers already predicted, eons ago, exactly how many possible positions your body can do. So when people think, I can't be excited by my body, there's so many things you can do. And just by moving from one position to the next, even if you were to do one of those positions every second, so we'll divide that by 60 seconds, then divide again by 60 minutes in an hour, and divide by 24 hours, then that's going to be 97 days. 97 days of doing a different position every second. I think I worked that out. It's a lot, 8 million. It's a lot. And that must be about right, because pretty soon, you've probably had this already, I think you're still quite young, but at around 32 years of age, 33 maybe, is your 1 billion second anniversary.
Oh.
So it makes sense that, that every 97 days might be 8 million or something like that. I'm about to have my 2 billion second anniversary. You're invited to it. I just had my 2 billion one, actually. It was last December last year. Anna's about to have her 1 billion one next year. Yeah. So the thing is, if you were to look at just the simple movements, the simple positions the body can do, and do one new position every second, you've got 100 days of practice, of practicing one new movement every second. So the trick is not to do difficult things. So what I encourage people to do is just practice with simple stuff. You don't have to even stand up. Move your fingers. And if anyone wants to do this with us now, just move your fingers. Then if you can, roll your shoulders. And as you're rolling your shoulders, let your chin come up and down in a way that when the shoulders go forward, the chin comes up. Shoulders go backwards, the chin comes in. And if you're standing, you can stand and you can go down on your toes, up on your heels. And as you're doing this, you're moving a few different regions. So you move the fingers and shoulders are one place. The neck is another place. Relax your pelvic floor completely and move your pelvis forward and down, backward and up. Then lengthen your lower back and expand the abdomen. As you go forward, the lower back expands. Come upward, the abdomen expands. And then work with your face. So you make your jaw go forward and backward, lips opening and closing, eyes opening and closing. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting hot. I'm getting hot, but I'm not feeling any heart rate increase. And it's very, very simple. And you can do this for as long as your mind can tolerate the sameness. But even doing this, we could do the other way. We could go backwards with our fingers and shoulders. That's a second way of doing the whole thing. We could do it with one shoulder first, the other shoulder second. I call these strokes. The first one's waves. And we can go like forward stroke, pedaling a bicycle. And we can also do a circle like a hula hoop. Or we can go the other way. Or we can make like a loop going up in the air like this, what I call spiral, what I call loop, up and down, side to side. And then the fifth way is more free. So you make your own inner dance where you're moving everything a little bit, moving fluidly, moving from your core, with your core, breathing naturally. But what you experience in this inner type of dance is every joint does something, nothing does any stress. And if you make it so everything is coordinated, you've got connection. But the connection, even without the coordinated movement, is improving blood flow. But if you've got blood flow, that's energy. If you're fully relaxed, that's love and peace and parasympathetic dominance inside your body. But if everything's happening in synchrony, you get a resonance. And the resonance amplifies and energy amplifies. This is a very simple set of things to do. But, people, if you just give them that without the mental shift, think, what purpose does this serve? How can this make me stronger? I'm not suffering. So to get out of the paradigm that suffering is important, I think is a really key step. To shift to a new paradigm, which in physiotherapy circles we say, exercise is optional, but movement is essential. Just keep moving.
I want to take a moment to talk about something truly special and close to the heart. Miele Strega, my own line of natural handmade body products. And as you know, I am passionate about moving with ease and feeling good in our bodies. And that extends to what we put on our skin. Each batch of Mielestrega products is crafted with love, for real, by me, using ingredients from my very own beehives and my darling bees, combined with the pure botanicals. Whether it's a soothing, luxury whipped body butter, a nourishing lip balm, or a gentle soap, everything is designed to support your body's natural rhythm, just like the practices we explore here. If you're looking for skincare that's pure, it's intentional and deeply connected and aligned to nature, check it out at mielestrega.com. And because you're a listener, I've got a special gift for you. Use the code SYNERGY10, spelled with Y and Y, for 10% off your first order. Now, back to our conversation.
I just read today that Dick Van Dyke, who was this old actor in the 1960s, who was I think he was in the television version or the movie version of Mary Poppins, I think with Julie Andrews. He was very vibrant and did lots of singing and dancing, but apparently he's just turned 100 and he still sings and dances and does yoga and does moves. He looks very good for someone in his hundreds, But that's the trick. Most people give up movement once they stop working. The people who retire often die very quickly after their retirement because they give up, they stop, or they take up drugs. And many people, of course, in a way, retire as soon as they finish work each night. They come home, they retire from their job, they drink a beer, they smoke a joint, they take some cocaine. I always say, I don't like cocaine, but I don't mind the smell of it. Now, that's a really bad joke. Sorry. I don't like cocaine, but I don't mind the smell. It's a very bad joke. You have to laugh in life because laughter is the best medicine,
Indeed. And what you just said about the sameness, the repetition, that's really what repetition teaches in the practice.
Yes.
To go from that setting in your brain of thinking repetition equals boring.
Yes, yeah.
To find stimuli while you're repeating the same action, because no movement that you repeat will ever be the same, and you can always find different areas to focus on, different movement, slightly different directions, planes, speed. And I see that very often, that's like, we're going to repeat the same movement so many times that gets boring. But then as soon as you actually get rid of that mindset, you actually start enjoying it. And that's when the connection with the body happens.
Yes. It's in the beginning, it's getting started. That's possibly the hardest, like to learn a system is challenging for people. That's why as a teacher, we're always aware of who our audience is, and it's always much easier, of course, to have a homogeneous group. I think you can generalize and say it's easier to teach a group than it is to teach an individual, provided the group is homogeneous. If it's a group which is like one super young person, one super old, one super, type A personality, one type B, or one injured, one super fit, it's not so easy. Then you're better off teaching everyone individually. But if you have a group of like-minded, physically similar in age and structure, sometimes even same sex, and you work with that group of people often is easier to work with than an individual, because the group, they feed each other, people encourage each other, and you've got social connection going on as well. And so with the social connection, that helps people appreciate the connection. So when they're not feeling the connection inside themselves, they've got a connection with other people. And in the same way that, soldiers are taught, my dad was in the army, he said, whenever we came to a bridge, son, we would stop marching because we knew that if everyone marched in the same step going over the bridge, you can destroy the bridge. So people doing the same activity will all start to resonate with each other, and the resonance becomes more amplified. So, it's important, I think, for people who are, thinking what steps can they make. Maybe one of them is to find a homogeneous group to work with, to find someone like you in Sweden or me in Australia to work with, and find a class, Or if not, maybe to join an online group or doing something similar. Or if you can't do that, maybe ask a few friends to do these things with you. It can be as simple as going for a walk, you know. Instead of people saying, let's meet up and we'll have a meal together. Let's meet at the pub and have a drink together. Why not just get up and go for a walk together? But not a stressful walk, a gentle walk. And then to make the walk better, then don't just walk like robots where the shoulders don't move and the hips don't move and the abdomen is locked tight. As you're walking, let the shoulders roll. Let the neck be free. Let the pelvic floor be loose. Let the abdomen be relaxed. Walk sexy. It looks terrible for some people, but they've even shown, I think I've quoted already, the paper from the Journal of Reproductive Biology in 2000, and you can find it by Googling the words gait and orgasm. And they found that women who walked with more of a pelvic tilt, they actually had they had markers on their hips and they're walking on treadmills, and they noticed that there was a direct correlation between the amount a woman's hips moves back and forth as she walks to the frequency and intensity of her orgasms. I mean, what more do you want? When you're walking, let the whole body relax, and then your body starts to move more holistically, you know, because otherwise when people walk, they get some sort of benefit, but often it's the hips and the knees that strain. Whereas if you move your core in a way that what we want is when the shoulder goes forward on one side, the hip and the knee goes forward on the other side. So actually your navel and your pubic bone should be moving. And if you get the movement from that point with every step, then your upper limbs connect to the upper part of your gut brain, your lower limbs connect to the lower part of your gut brain, and every step you take is twisting your core, massaging your internal organs, mobilizing your spine, improving the cerebrospinal fluid, which then nourishes your brain and nourishes your internal organs and means that your hips and knees won't strain so much and you'll actually be more stronger. I mean, you've seen Olympic walkers, that they're walking fully with their core moving first, you know. Often it's just their hips, but at least better than nothing. So this idea, in other words, if someone can't come to one of my classes or your classes or any of the 5-dimensional synergy flow classes or classes with the same idea around the world, then maybe it's the principles that are important. Get out there, go for a walk. Don't lock your core, move from the core. Don't force breathing more than normal or heart racing. Look for natural breathing while you're doing something. Look for heart, hardly working at all while you're having a good time. And what also really helps is if you add music to it. So these movements can seem boring for some people, but if you put one of your favorite tunes on the same time, you make your own inner dance. And I'd suggest if you are doing these movements as a type of dance, avoid the staccato movements because they jar your body. They block energy. Make the movement smooth. So you can still have rhythm. Instead of going up, down, up, down, up, down, you go down, back, and make it fluid. This is a good, important principle of what we're practicing and teaching, I think, Arianna, that's important for people to know, that when you move fluidly. Initially move actively, move from your core, breathe naturally, move fluidly. And these movements, even if they're just your own intuitive guess at what feels good, if it feels good, it's probably good for you. If it feels bad, then probably you're going to stimulate a sympathetic nervous system overload, which will turn off your immune system, digestive system, reproductive system. You might think, I'm exercising, it's going to make me stronger in a few weeks' time. But your nervous system is going, you're in a state of flight or fight. And if you're running away from what your body thinks might be some primitive saber-toothed tiger, then it's going to go turn off all non-essential functions. It'll turn off immune system, digestive system, reproductive system. And you might still think you're doing an exercise class. But your nervous system is going fear, anger, aggression, lack of safety, lack of trust. And so it doesn't really make you feel good. But when people take drugs, it's like, heroin makes you feel like, hey, I'm really happy with the way I am, I just want this situation always. Marijuana takes you out of your head into your body. Cocaine makes you feel energized and strong, So if you can get these feelings through your own practice, to get the feeling of strength in your practice, Many people have the wrong approach. If you take cocaine, you're going to feel strong. You can do anything. You take some good LSD. LSD will make you feel strong. But if you're addicted to drugs, any sorts of drugs, that's self-defeating. But if people approach strength training, the way they normally approach it is to train for strength by failing. They go, if we lift up these weights to the point where we can't lift them anymore, it might be a 9 repetition maximum. Do that 3 or 4 repetitions, but by the end of the sets, you can't do it anymore. That's the weight you've chosen, because that's the weight that we know will make you feel stronger, will make you stronger in 2 or 3 weeks' time. But the problem is you are training to fail. And when you train your body to fail, it doesn't really like it at the subconscious level. So what I do is I train to succeed. Only do practices where you're not going to fail. And that feeling of doing something which is a task you can do, and you could do it as many times as you like without failing, that I think is more similar to the feeling you might get if you took cocaine, where you're feeling strong. But of course, cocaine can really muck up your body, massively. It messes up your blood cells, it can mess up you. It can mess up your CO2 tolerance as well, So most drugs have got problems with them, especially the addictive drugs, But if you can have an effect of, I feel like I'm strong enough to do this job, I don't need to be stronger. That's if you practice in a way where you're not training to failure. So in the words of the Sutras of Patanjali, it says yoga in terms of asana should be, one is stira sukham asanam, they say in Sanskrit. So you be firm but calm. And it says whatever this activity is that you call your yoga, and yoga in Sanskrit, it's the same word that we in English would call meditation. Meditation and yoga in the modern world are thought of as 2 separate things. Actually, meditation is more like sitting in an uncomfortable position, getting cold and bored. Yoga is more like stretching and tensing, but actually they should have been the same thing. So the modern interpretation messed it up. But when you're in the meditative state, it doesn't have to be something which is stationary. You can do meditation in action. So the meditation in action state is like the flow state of the elite athlete. But you don't have to be an elite athlete to be in the flow state. You just have to do something which is yogic in nature. Meditative state, or the yoga state, or the asana state in the Sutras of Patanjali, the main text on Raja Yoga says, is have something which is, asana should be stira sukham, which means firm but calm. This activity you're doing, you should feel strong but relaxed, and you should keep doing this activity to be called yoga, to be called meditation, to be called asana. You should be able to do it long enough that it becomes effortless. And then it says all dualities shall cease, and you'll become one with yourself, connected in your body. Mr. Iyengar once said to us that yoga is when you make every cell of your body sing the song of the soul. So you're making every cell of your body come together. So instead of just being this disconnected brain in your head with this body that doesn't work very well, suddenly you're doing something where you're succeeding. I can move my fingers. Look, I can move them like the fronds of a sea anemone. So cool. And as I do it, I can let my shoulders move, my neck move. And I become like a seaweed under the sea. And you start to feel warm suddenly. You start to feel energized. And if you put some nice music on, it might be like your own inner dance. Or you might like to go, like tonight, I went outside before sunset and we practiced the sounds of the birds. It was lovely. Because there's music all around you the whole time. And so it's not difficult to do this. So the 2 most important steps, I think, to move away from addiction will be to recognize that the same things you get from the things you're addicted to, i.e., chemical drugs, or social addictions such as pornography, or food cravings. Often food cravings are a little bit social, a little bit drug addicts, drug as well. But the other things like workaholism, or addictive exercise, which just stimulates the productions of endorphins and stuff. What we want is the movements that feel good while we're doing them. So we're getting our own fix but nothing that feels painful. You don't want stuff that you're going to wake up the next day and feel painful. Like I said, some people thrive on it because they enjoyed the drugs so much they got by working in a stressful state. They secreted the endorphins. So while they're practicing, they're not in pain because they're training so hard. But the next day they're in pain. And occasionally people do that. People who are new to exercise, they start off training too hard. And those people, instead of going, I'm sore the next day, this is good, it must be a workout, they go, I'm sore the next day, I'm not doing this again. And the reality is 95% of people, if they're sore the next day, they're not doing it again. So the world of exercise is interesting. Only 5% of people have a regular exercise practice. Most of those people are practicing in a way where they're just exercising in a way which causes stress. And that stress, is being masked by this chemical release in the body, which is an endorphin release, which is your body's own heroin in a way. So although we call it a social addiction, it actually gives you a biological addiction and a chemical addiction as well. So what we want is to get the feeling, the good aspects of what addictive things do for you, the things that make you feel connected, that make you feel de-stressed. But of course, those things go away as soon as you stop the drugs. As soon as someone hasn't got their fix, they feel stressed, they feel disconnected. And you can't always get drugs. And many drugs are so fraught with problems, and they have so many side effects. But if you can use a controlled addictive behavior in a way which gives you this relaxed state with blood moving and you're training for success in a completely non-pain-free way, this can take people out of addiction. And I think it's something which people like you and me naturally tapped into in the first place.
And I think it's also important to put it out there that in contemporary society, well, first of all, stress levels are overall high, and it's the new normal. But there is, like, we all have some sort of addiction that has become so normal and so easy to get addicted to something. And again, it can be social media, it can be the phone, it can be, like you said, sugar. So both like these chemical and social patterns. So addiction is not anymore, I think, it's just the drugs. So like you said, cocaine and stuff. But it has broadened so much that it is almost a new normal. Like,
Yes,
or watching
yes.
series on Netflix, like there are so many possible options to choose from. So so if we all have some addiction or this possibility for addiction, what is really the function? What is the evolutionary function of it?
I think we've already answered it. Like addiction brings people to a state where they feel relaxed and connected, and they feel better than they were feeling before. And so we want to feel connected. I believe that every cell of our body has its own consciousness, and that when we're feeling most complete is when every cell of the body treats every other cell like someone they love. And so we really want to have energy and love circulating through the body so each cell connects to each other cell. And that, what we really want is to recognize that our individual consciousness is probably a group consciousness. It's all the individual consciousnesses of 50 trillion cells and all the other cells in our body, non-human ones, acting as one. And so if this is happening on an individual level, I believe really it's probable that we all want to do this on a global level as well. We all crave connection. We all had mothers. And so really, if you think of it logically, it's highly likely that everyone on the world today, every human at least, if not every organism, actually is part of the same family. So why should we not appreciate that we're part of the same family? And people love bonding. So the addiction that people have, the unhealthy addictions to drugs, to things like exercise and pornography and things like this, they all help you feel this connection, this sense of being okay.
It's a coping mechanism.
It's a coping mechanism, but it's a coping because there aren't the things existing in our life that were here before, like we talked about with the mice experiments. When they put the mice in a miserable cage, the cocaine seemed more attractive. But when you give them a full, vibrant life, it's not necessary, you know. So you and me have been doing movement all our life. We didn't have the craving to be with drugs and things. You know, I had an interesting article sent to me the other day, just to wish we'd finish off, I guess.
Yeah.
And the article comes, it's published in the journal called Cell Metabolism. And for those interested, it's from May 2021. And the title is Excessive Exercise Training Causes Mitochondrial Function Impairment and Decreases Glucose Tolerance in Healthy Volunteers. So we've always known that exercise, if it's too stressful, causes problems with your whole body. But it was always assumed that it's only excessive exercise. But more and more now there are coming these studies which suggest that actually we're all so baseline stressed in the first place that pretty much everyone is being stressed further by the exercise. It's just you don't notice it because we're all so stressed in the first place. So the way I look at it is that people get benefits from sleep because that's when they're the most relaxed, but they don't get blood flow when they're relaxed. People get limited benefits from exercise because it usually makes blood flow, but usually they're stressed with exercise, with heart racing, overbreathing, stretching and tensing. So what we need to look for most in our life is that combination, something, posture, movement, breathing, mental control, lifestyle changes, which allow us to feel the benefits of sleep and exercise at the same time, where blood flows effortlessly with a low heart rate, no tension, no stress, simple, easy movements done for 90 to 99% of your practice time. And then maybe for a few minutes or, a short time each day or each week, go hard if you wish. But the mistake is most people sit at a desk all day and then go hard for 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week. And that just doesn't feel good because you're going from a fully relaxed state where blood is not flowing to a fully tense state where blood starts to flow. What we really want is the blood flowing in a relaxed state. And so that is seemingly, part of the neurological, biophysical parameters that happen in that state will be satiated by the addictive personality and the addictive things which people do, such as drug taking and certain social behaviors,
Wiring the nervous system to look for that rather than looking for the stimulus given by drugs
external
or
things.
Because then ultimately, physiologically, your body doesn't label addiction in a good or bad. It's just, let me get out of this situation. So whatever comes, I'll take it, as long as it creates a change, right?
Yeah, this is brilliant, Arianna. It's so good to talk to you about this.
Thank you, Simon. This is incredibly interesting. I hope this was insightful for those who will listen.
It's insightful for me to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I always say, keep sharing good energy and loving information inside yourself as a model for how we are in the world. I see you doing that so nicely, and I think we should all be doing it. So make healthy blood flow in a relaxed body, move simply, move gently, turn on some music, go for a walk, but get off your chair and do something in a gentle, loving way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes to that.
Yes. Or write to us and come and see us, and we'll share some really nice, cool movements of 5-dimensional synergy flow. Even better. That'd be lovely. I'm so looking forward to seeing you later on during the year. And you take care of yourself, and much, much love to you, and from all of us in Australia to all of you in Sweden. Yeah, body barata.
Thank you, Simon.
I'm a body, so take care.
Bye.
Lots of love. But thank you much, much appreciated. Signing off.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Synergy Podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something within you, a new way of thinking, feeling, or moving. If you love this episode, let me know. Share it, leave a review, or connect with me on Instagram @mielestrega. And if you're ready to go deeper, check out my yoga offerings, come to a yoga class at the studio, and check out my handmade natural body products at mielestrega.com. Remember, your body is yours, your pleasure is yours, and living pain-free is possible. Until next time, move with ease and live with joy.